Welcome to Madison Magazine. I'm Dina Wright. The year was 1963. The Badgers lost a close one to USC in the Rose Bowl. The push-button telephone was introduced. The Wisconsin State Journal was just 7 cents. From Texas to Florida up to Maryland, black people could not use a single public toilet. First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy introduced the pillbox hat, and on November 22nd, her husband, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, was assassinated. You know, JFK and the city of Madison crossed paths more often than you might think in the areas of progressivism, developmental diseases, and the battle for civil rights. And when we talk to Madisonians old enough to remember JFK's death, you know, they all use the very same word to describe how they felt when they first heard the news.
I was shocked.
Shock.
Shock. And shocked.
I was shocked a little bit. Didn't know how to react, really.
It was very sad. Long time ago, but we still remember.
People were crying, and there was a lot of sadness everywhere. It wasn't a good day.
I was at work, and it came over the loudspeaker, and work stopped, and everybody bowed their heads and said a little prayer.
Before John F. Kennedy became a political icon, he was a senator running for president. And one of the stops he made on his campaign trail was right here at the Fieldhouse on the UW-Madison campus on October 23rd, 1960. Besides economic growth and foreign policy, he spoke at length on the then controversial subject of racial equality.
That I was concerned as an American when 2 children are born in 2 houses next door to each other. One is white and the other is a Negro. That Negro baby has 1/2, regardless of his talents. Statistically, that baby has 1/2 as much chance of finishing high school as the white baby. 1/3 as much chance of finishing college.
Though Kennedy spoke in favor of civil rights, UW professor William P. Jones, author of a new book on the March on Washington, says that behind the scenes, he was actually ambivalent on the topic.
Most white voters, both in the North and the South, thought that Kennedy was pushing too fast and too hard on civil rights. And this was a time when people like King, A. Philip Randolph, all the major civil rights leaders thought that Kennedy really wasn't doing anything. And so he had to walk this fine line. And after the march took place, he greeted the leaders of the march at the White House and really kind of embraced them. But that was after a very long period of trying to actually get them to convince them to call off the march.
While Jones says the potential for violence was one of the things that led to Kennedy's concerns about the march, Madison's own Progressive magazine had concerns about the man himself, despite a close relationship between JFK and the magazine's then editor.
I think what the magazine was frustrated about was that Kennedy wouldn't take the case to the public and override the institutional opposition to some of his program in Congress. Kennedy would write letters thanking the Progressive for taking policy positions that he liked, and the editor, Morris Rubin, would write to Kennedy and say, that was a great speech and we really appreciated what you had to say. Kennedy stayed at Morris Rubin's house when he was in town, and the 2 men wrote some letters back and forth about that.
But Kaleem Kerr of the Urban League of Greater Madison says African Americans should actually commend Kennedy for taking a politically dangerous stance on civil rights.
Or that there was an effort to build a white knight of the civil rights movement, you know, someone who may not have deserved all of the credit that they got. You know, I think building him up in some ways diminished a little bit of the hard work that African Americans did to try to gain his attention. However, he is a man who evolved in his role fairly quickly. He was forced now to have to deal with an issue that he didn't have to deal with before. And he could have been like a lot of other presidents and just said, see you, shut him out, you know. But he didn't do that.
One of the strongest connections between Madison and JFK can be found right here at the Weizmann Center. Center Director Marcia Malik says that the Kennedy family actually had a very personal reason to take interest in the center's work in the field of developmental disabilities.
During the campaign for his presidency, there was an article written by Eunice Kennedy Shriver, his sister, and it was the family announcing that they had a sister who had developmental disabilities. So, because in those years, these family members were kept quiet.
JFK actually sent a telegram to commemorate the opening of what was then called the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Medical Laboratory, named in honor of his brother. The telegram is dated November 20th, 1963, just 2 days before he was assassinated.
I would thank the family for their lasting contribution to the field of developmental disabilities, for their vision and their courage in talking openly about something that now we all talk openly about. And there is no shame in having a child with a disability. We love our children with disabilities as we love all of our children.
In his October 1960 speech at the Fieldhouse, JFK suggested all children, both black and white, be given equal opportunities. That was not the case then, and according to a new report released by the Wisconsin Council on Children and Families, 50 years later, that is still not the case in Dane County.
We found out after looking at 40-plus indicators across the board that African Americans here are faring worse, sometimes far worse, than African Americans in the nation. And that was what was particularly surprising and alarming, because the concept that a rising tide lifts all boats was not taking place here. In other words, we were actually being tugged as a county. When you're looking at the numbers, whites were being tugged upward and African Americans were, for some reason, being tugged downward.
It's a good place to live for middle-class folks, and particularly for middle-class, well-educated white folks. For communities of color, particularly African American communities, that's not so much the case. And so that's a tension within our community that I think is really important that we address.
5 decades after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, we are still seeing inequities in areas like education, housing, and employment.
He says that baby has 4 times as much chance of being out of work in his life.
Not much different.
What a dear prediction of what the state of affairs is in Dane County today, with the black Madisonian being unemployed 5 times greater than the white Madisonian. This is chilling.
Jump 50 years into the future, and Dane County and the nation have far to go to fulfill the ideals John F. Kennedy and others spoke of in the 1960s. And on this anniversary of his death, many people, including African Americans, remember JFK as a soldier, perhaps sometimes a reluctant one, but a soldier nonetheless in the civil rights struggle.
He took on big issues, and not everybody liked it, and he should be revered for it. And so, yeah, I would be one of those people who proudly hung a picture of JFK in my home.
So do you have one now?
No, we have a picture of Obama. But, you know, I haven't even thought about it, but my grandmother did. You know, she had pictures of him. I mean, she had little snapshot photographs in the Life magazine when he was assassinated. You know, black people loved JFK.
Though photos of President Kennedy may no longer adorn living room walls, his memory remains in the hearts of many. Coming up next, Zach Brandon and Shiva Bidar go head-to-head on the most controversial issues of today. As the weather outside gets colder, the topics in and around the city of Madison just keep getting hotter. In our regular segment, With All Due Respect, Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce President Zach Brandon and City of Madison Alderperson Shiva Bidar face off on the issues we're all talking about. Up first, they take on next year's highly anticipated Wisconsin gubernatorial race.
Well, thanks, Dina. It's as if the contentious season has never ended. We're back into the election cycle again. The gubernatorial race seems to be shaping up. We've got Scott Walker, our current governor. It looks like he's going to face off against Mary Burke, the Democrat. From a Democratic standpoint, they have to be happy with what they have with Mary Burke. And on paper, she's exactly what they were looking for. Somebody who contrasts the governor, but also is focused on and has experience in economic development and business. But what will really matter for businesses in Greater Madison, and what I think business owners and business people will vote on, is which of those candidates understands Madison's business climate, celebrates those types of jobs being created here, and understands that jobs created in Madison are also jobs that are being created in Wisconsin, and the governor, whoever that might be, should be excited about that.
You know, in addition to business issues, I think what Mary brings with her also is the understanding of local issues. She's a school board member, so she really understands well the issues of school district, funding, So that's going to be, I think, also a strong point for her, that she really understands education at the local level. In addition, I mean, I think there's going to be the issue of gender. She hopefully will be, I hope, our first woman governor. I think Tammy Baldwin set the stage for a woman being able to win a statewide election in Wisconsin. So it'll be interesting to see how that issue of gender plays out during the election season. So something to watch for. From contentious not to cuddling, the Snuggle House. So way to make the national news, Madison, with the Snuggle House. You know, it's just for me, a strange business model. I think for $80 an hour, I'm just going to stick to snuggling my teddy bear. What do you think about the Snuggle House?
Well, with all due respect, I think it's $60, not $80. Not that I know firsthand, but that's what I've read. You know, I agree they've got an amazing amount of publicity. In fact, I think they should get an award for figuring out how to get national publicity from a business that wasn't even open yet. But the onus is on them. I mean, there are some frustration and maybe some nervousness in the neighborhood about what they really will be. And I think that they have to be willing to accept the scrutiny they're going to get from the city, from the police, from the health inspectors, because the onus is on them to prove that they're not doing something illicit and that it really is up and up business.
How about State Street? What do you think about the changes in State Street? It looks like the small family-owned businesses that have been around are closing. There's a lot of changes happening, and people are really worried. I worry myself about State Street becoming really like any other street in the U.S. and not really keeping that uniqueness that has made State Street what it is, and the changes that really are driving out the small family-owned businesses. So I'm not sure that those changes are going to really be positive for State Street. Of course, you know, I'm willing to wait and see what happens. But the changes are big changes.
Right, and there's a lot of concern. There's a lot of hand-wringing going on about what does this mean? Is it a trend? I think if you look back historically, businesses have opened and closed on State Street all the time, and that I think these are just some more well-known businesses that have been around for a while. But if you go back and look, and I know what you're going to say, which is we're not talking about Fortune 500 companies, but let me use an example, is that if you think about the Fortune 500, over the last 55 years, 13% of those businesses are still around. The other 87% went out of business. And it's a natural evolution that happens. There's an ebb and flow that happens in the business community and on that street. And I think what we're looking for is to make sure it's still a vibrant and growing street and community for us. With that, back to you, Dee.
Thanks, Zach and Shiva. Looking for a job? Up next, we'll meet some tech gurus who created not only their own jobs, but their own companies right here in Madison. The best and brightest of the city's growing young entrepreneurial scene when we come back. Welcome back. So check this out. This month, Madison Magazine unveiled their first annual M List. If you're thinking, what's an M List? It's 53 of the most important players in the city's emerging technology sector. And to celebrate, editors and city officials hosted a tour of Madison's hottest tech companies. They called it a startup crawl, and we decided to tag along.
What's wrong?
Oh, God. My ex keeps calling me. I'm not really sure what to do about it.
Oh, how annoying.
Oh, tell me about it. But, you know, I heard there's, like, some kind of way that you can block numbers with this new operating system. Do you know how to do that?
I don't, but you know what? I'm about to get on a bus with some people who do.
On that bus?
That bus. Right there.
I think I have time. Can I tag along?
Yeah, come on.
Wait, hold up, Brennan. Where are we going? Where's the bus going to take us?
Well, we're going on the M List Startup Crawl. 5 companies, part of the 53 companies we featured in the Madison Magazine's November issue as part of the M List. Entrepreneurs, technologists, people who are growing their businesses in Madison. They're high-tech, biotech, they're interesting, they're fun, they're young, they're entrepreneurial, they're creative, and we're going to go check it out.
Okay, sounds good to me. I hope they can help me with my problem.
I think they can.
Okay, let's go.
Okay.
Okay, Brennan, what is the first stop?
The first stop is Sector 67.
There's people that we teach classes in the evening, so some people just stop in just to take a class. They don't really kind of want to dip their toe in the water and see if they really want to learn about 3D printing or learn about how to weld something or who knows what. Then there's sort of the tinkerers or the hobbyists who are sort of avid participants in building things, and they just need access to the tools or the resources. Then the other contingents are the entrepreneurs, and so we have office space here that people rent on a month-to-month basis that lets them work on their business.
What's up next, Brennan?
Up next is Bendy Works.
graffiti work. Where does that name come from? So it's a cool name, but where does it come from?
So it comes from the idea that software should bend, not break. What we focus on is providing software that can stand the test of time and modify it and be modified over time so that it can meet the ever-changing needs of our clients.
Where are we headed to next, Brennan?
Horizon and Murphy.
What we do is we help people send their music collection to the cloud. So if you have CDs and soon vinyl records, you can send them to us. We store them here on our shelves instead of your shelves at home, and we give you access to all of your music.
And most of your business is from buying, selling, or trading?
It's actually about 50-50. So half the business is for people sending in their CDs just to access their own music, and the other half is people that go on to the marketplace where they can buy music.
Well, I'm excited about the next step. What's the next step?
100 State.
I think in this day and age, Madison, if you look at what's going on here, has the skill set, has the talent pool, and what we're trying to build is an ecosystem where people can come work, they can collaborate. If you think of all these entrepreneurs out there working in their basements, working in coffee shops, what we want to create for them is a community where our job is to manage the front door to get the right people in the space and then let them create.
What makes Madison the ideal place to have a startup business?
Well, when you think about it, it's great quality of life, access to a well-trained, sophisticated workforce, proximity to the universities and to the colleges, but it's also there's a vibe here.
But being a person of color, one of the things I noticed was there were very few people of color in these businesses. Anything that Chamber of Commerce is doing to attract some of those folks?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we're very focused on is this idea of economic inclusion, that you have to be thinking about whatever you're tackling, whatever you're addressing, has to be across the broad spectrum of Madisonians. And so we're working with the Latino Chamber to talk about, I call it Latinopreneur. But we're talking with the Madison Black Chamber about how we start to think about not talking about equality, but talking about equity. And what I mean by equity is not equal, I mean about owning a piece, because you're not truly equal until you own a piece, because ownership means that you have a seat at the table.
With the energy and enthusiasm and some of the cool stuff that's going on here, and I think you guys are doing it right. Just keep plugging away.
Brendan, I really can't believe the size of the startup culture here in Madison.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It really is.
Oh, that reminds me. Did you ever find a way to block those calls?
Shoot, I forgot all about it. I better head back in there.
To learn more about the M-List and the city's tech scene, pick up this month's print issue of Madison Magazine. Last but not least, is Madison too big, too small, or just right? Rebecca Ryan has her take, and she's up next.
Welcome back to Madison Magazine. I'm Rebecca Ryan. Wow. My Tier 2 trade-off column in the October issue of Madison Magazine, it raised a few hackles. In case you missed it, my column focused on the challenges that talented people face when trying to grow their careers here. My premise was that large Tier 1 cities, cities like Los Angeles and New York, they offer more career options than smaller Tier 2 cities like Madison. So, those who want great big careers often make trade-offs to live here. Needless to say, that didn't go over well with a lot of readers. While the online dialogue roared, I sat back and reflected. And one of my observations is this. Some of the same Dane County progressives who cajole the GOP to get with the times seem to love the past too. Their past. They're so attached to Madison's best place to live narrative that they have a hard time hearing anything else. And I wonder how this prevents Madison from moving forward. I'm not the first person to notice this, and I won't be the last. John Gramling of Capital City Hughes and David Dahmer of the Madison Times have also noticed that our city's liberal majority can, and sometimes does, get in the way of the difficult but necessary dialogue we need to have. Madison is no longer the city it once was, and we need to address our challenges openly. I love Madison, but I refuse to love it blindly. We have a lot of assets, absolutely, but we also have shadow sides, parts of us that aren't so great. Now, the best example I've seen of an organization that's straddling the line between our assets and our challenges is the Clean Lakes Alliance. Here's an organization that has done the hard work of telling Madison to get its act together without honking anyone off. And they're willing to be held accountable for the lake's improvement. We all need to tear a page from their playbook to address our city as it truly is, not as we imagine it in our heads, and build on that. Yes, my article was controversial, but I'll keep on writing because I want our good city to be a great city.
Thanks a lot, Rebecca. Well, that's it for us. Hey, don't forget to hit us up at madisonmagazine.com to check out anything you'd like to see again. Give us a like on Facebook and tweet us your comments or story ideas on Twitter at MadisonMagTV. See you next month.
Madison Magazine is brought to you by Smart Toyota and University of Wisconsin-Madison.